He told her his name only once. Just Do-yun. She never forgot it. Maeve Alcott is 23, a black woman who works the register at a modest diner, counting coins on her walk to work because rent went up and her manager keeps talking about cutting her shift. Her route cuts through the square. That morning, 2 boys shove a phone in a man's face. He's filthy. Overgrown beard, torn gray rags, a dragon tattoo climbing the left side of his neck. They laugh. They call him trash. Maeve steps between them. No shouting, no fists. Just a woman who won't move. The boys leave. She holds out her hand. Seo Do-yun stares at her open palm for a long time before he takes it. She buys him water. She promises to come back after her shift. And she does. He tells her a story that's true in every way except the facts. She offers him her couch, with rules. They walk 30 minutes to her small apartment. But after the shower, she notices things. The posture, the cared-for body under the grime. A tattoo far too elaborate for a man with nothing. Before sunrise, he's gone, and the note he leaves is only the beginning. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Maeve counted the coins twice before she let herself step off the curb. $41.60, wrapped in a paper napkin at the bottom of her bag, the same napkin she'd wrapped them in 3 nights ago. Rent was $800. She had until Friday. She dropped the bundle back into the bag, pressed the zipper shut with her thumb, and kept walking. The sidewalk was still wet from the street cleaners. Her sneakers left pale prints on the concrete for half a block before they dried. She walked fast because walking fast burned less than the bus, and the bus was $1.75 each way, and $1.75 twice a day for 5 days was $17.50 she'd rather keep. She'd done that math so many times it wasn't math anymore. It was just a thing she knew. The way she knew which floorboard in her apartment creaked and which stair on the walk-up she could skip. 3 blocks to the corner, then the plaza, then 4 more to the diner. She pulled her top down where it had ridden up, the pink-ribbed one, the good one, the one that still looked new because she washed it by hand in the sink and hung it over the shower rod. The apron was folded in her bag next to the coins. She never wore it on the street. On the street, she was just a woman walking, and she liked that better than being a woman in an apron walking, because the apron told people things about her before she opened her mouth. A man watering the planters outside the laundromat lifted his chin at her. "Morning, Maeve." "Morning, Sal." She didn't slow down. He knew she didn't slow down. He'd stopped expecting it years ago and lifted his chin anyway. Every day, and every day she gave him the 2 words back. That was the whole arrangement, and it worked. Her phone buzzed against her hip. She already knew who it was. She let it buzz twice more before she answered, because she needed the 2 seconds to make her voice come out even. "Hey, Ronnie. You coming in?" Ronnie always asked it like an accusation, like she'd ever once not come in. "I'm 4 blocks out. We need to talk about the schedule." A pause on his end. She heard the register drawer slam, the one that stuck. "Not on the phone. When you get here." He hung up. Maeve took the phone from her ear and looked at the dark screen for a moment, at her own reflection in it, the almond eyes, the mouth she was holding too tight. She loosened it. She put the phone away. Talk about the schedule. She knew what that meant. It meant the Tuesday and Thursday openers, the good shifts, the ones with the morning rush, and the counter-regulars who tipped in bills instead of the change they scraped from their trays. It meant Ronnie had run the numbers, or someone above Ronnie had run the numbers. And the numbers said the diner didn't need a cashier from 6 to 11 when the fry cook could ring people up between orders. She'd watched it happen to Denise last spring. Denise got moved to 2 closing shifts a week, and then to 1, and then Denise wasn't on the board at all. And nobody ever said the word fired, because nobody had to. She kept walking, faster now. The plaza opened up ahead of her, the square of cracked pavement with the dry fountain in the middle, and the 3 benches nobody fixed. Pigeons lifted off the fountain rim as a delivery truck backed toward the shuttered bakery. Maeve cut left along her usual line, past the bench where the old man with the folding chessboard sometimes sat, empty now, past the newsstand that only sold lottery tickets and energy drinks. She'd walked this diagonal so many times her feet found it without her. It shaved maybe 90 seconds off going around, and 90 seconds mattered when Ronnie was standing by the stuck register drawer with his arms crossed, deciding things about her life. She thought about the $41. She thought about the phone bill, 22, due the same Friday. She thought about the fact that if she lost the openers, she'd have to find something else. And finding something else meant a gap, and a gap meant the landlord, and the landlord was not a man who liked gaps. None of it showed on her face. She'd learned a long time ago how to keep the arithmetic on the inside. Her mother used to say it plain, standing at their own stove in a kitchen, even smaller than the one Maeve had now. You can be scared, or you can be on time. Baby, you don't get to be both. Maeve chose on time. She chose it every single morning, and choosing it was the thing that kept her upright, the thing that was hers, the one thing nobody had handed her and nobody could take back without a fight. Because it had been a fight, getting here. This apartment, this job, this napkin full of coins, it looked like nothing from the outside, and it had cost her everything to build. 4 years ago, she'd had less than this. 4 years ago, she'd been sleeping on a cousin's couch with 2 garbage bags of clothes and a phone that only worked on the neighbor's stolen Wi-Fi. She'd clawed her way to a lease with her own name on it. Her name. Nobody co-signed. She remembered the pen shaking in her hand at the leasing office, and how she'd pressed harder to make it stop, the way she pressed her jaw tight now. So the openers mattered, not because of the openers, because of what they were a piece of. She reached the far side of the plaza, and the diner sign came into view down the block. The red letters with the burnt-out E so it read Din R, the way it had for as long as she'd worked there. Somebody had promised to fix it. Somebody was always promising to fix something. Priya was already at the flat top through the front window, hairnet on, spatula in hand, mouth moving at somebody Maeve couldn't see. Steam ghosted up the glass. Maeve felt the first thing in her chest loosen at the sight of her. Whatever Ronnie had decided, Priya would already know it, and Priya would have already decided what she thought about it, loudly, and there was something steadying in walking toward a person who was on your side before you even reached the door. The bell over the door clanged. It always clanged too loud, a real bell on a bent bracket, nothing electronic about it. Warmth and grease smell hit her face. 2 regulars at the counter, Mr. Okafor with his newspaper folded to the crossword, and the woman from the pharmacy whose name Maeve had never gotten. A booth of construction guys in the corner, hard hats stacked on the table like a centerpiece. There she is. Priya didn't turn from the grill. He's in the back. He's been in the back 20 minutes doing his little face. His little face. Maeve set her bag down behind the register and pulled the apron out. Loop over the head, tie behind the waist, the motion so worn in she could have done it in her sleep. He called me on the walk, said we need to talk about the schedule. Priya's spatula stopped. Just for a second. Then it scraped again, harder. That snake. We don't know anything yet. We know what talk about the schedule means. Priya flipped 2 eggs, slid them, cracked 2 more, all without looking down. It meant it with Denise. It meant it with the other girl, the tall one, before your time. It's the same words every time because he's got the imagination of a paper bag. Maeve tied the apron and smoothed the front of it. She could see herself faintly in the chrome of the milkshake machine, the curls piled and framing, the gold hoops small at her ears, the thin chain at her throat catching the light. She looked fine. She looked like a woman who had it together. That was the point of looking fine. You built the outside so nobody looked too hard at the inside. "Order up," Priya said, and slid 2 plates onto the pass. Table 4, and Maeve. She waited until Maeve met her eyes over the heat lamps. "Whatever he offers you, don't say yes in the room. You always say yes in the room. Come tell me first." "I don't always say yes in the room." "You said yes to the double on Christmas Eve in the room." Maeve took the plates. She didn't have an answer for that one. Table 4 was the construction guys. She set the plates down, refilled 2 coffees, caught a 3rd cup before it went empty, and did the small talk without hearing herself do it. "How's the sight? Careful with that hot plate. More toast coming right up." One of them tucked a 5 under his saucer when they left, and she said thank you, meant it, and dropped it in the jar under the counter that she and Priya split it close. 4s and 5s. That was the shape of a good morning. 4s and 5s added up if you added them up long enough. The rush thinned by 9:30. She wiped down the counter, restocked the napkin dispensers, counted the drawer against the slip, and got it right to the penny the first time, which she always did, which she was quietly proud of and would never say out loud. The register drawer stuck when she pushed it. She'd learned to hip-check it closed. Somebody had promised to fix that too. Ronnie came out from the back around 10. He had a clipboard, which was never good, because Ronnie didn't write things down unless he wanted to look like the writing was somebody else's decision and not his. "Maeve, got a second? For you, Ronnie, always." She kept her voice light. Priya, at the grill, went very still in a way that meant she was listening to everything. He set the clipboard on the counter and turned it toward her, and Maeve looked down at the grid of the schedule, at the little boxes with names in them, and she found her name and followed the row across, and the openers were gone. Tuesday, gone. Thursday, gone. In their place, in pencil, 2 closing shifts. Friday and Sunday nights, the dead ones, the ones where you were lucky to clear $10 in tips across 5 hours. Her stomach dropped. Her face did nothing. "Corporate's tightening up on the labor lines," Ronnie said, not meeting her eyes, talking to the clipboard. "It's not about you. Your numbers are good. Everybody's numbers are good. It's just, the openers, with the cook ringing, we don't technically need the second position on the floor those hours. So, Maeve heard herself say it flat, the way Ronnie had said it on the phone. It's not a cut, same job title, just different hours. The Friday and Sunday closes clear, about 1/3 of what the openers clear, in tips. She said it evenly, no heat, just the number, because the number was true, and Ronnie hated the number. You know that. Ronnie's jaw worked. "I don't set corporate policy. I'm not asking you to set it. I'm asking you to look at what you just handed me." She put one finger on the clipboard, on the empty Tuesday box where her name used to be. She didn't raise her voice. She'd learned that too, that the quietest thing in the room is the thing people lean in to hear. "I've opened this place 400 mornings. The drawer's never been short. The regulars ask for me by name. And you want to move me to the 2 shifts where I make the least money you can legally pay me. It's not personal, Maeve. It's completely personal. It's my rent." She lifted her finger off the clipboard. "But I hear you. Corporate, the labor lines." Priya's spatula had stopped entirely now. The pharmacy woman at the counter was pretending to read a menu she'd read 1,000 times. Ronnie shifted his weight. He'd expected tears or shouting, one of the two, and he'd braced for both. And now he had neither and didn't know what to do with his hands. "The schedule's not final till Friday," he said. "If something opens up on the mornings, You'd be first. You'd be first in line. First in line. Maeve nodded slowly. Okay. He picked the clipboard back up, held it to his chest like a shield, and retreated toward the back. And the swinging door swung and settled and swung and settled and went still. For a moment, Maeve stood at the register with both hands flat on the counter. She looked at the milkshake machine, at her own faint reflection in the chrome, at the woman who had it together. Behind her, the flat top hissed. In front of her, the bell over the door hung silent on its bent bracket. Then, Priya was there, on the other side of the pass, leaning close, voice down low under the hood fan. You didn't say yes in the room. No. Maeve let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. I didn't say yes in the room. Good. Priya reached over and squeezed her wrist once, hard, and let go. Because we're gonna figure this out. You hear me? Friday's not here yet. Maeve nodded. She wanted to believe it. She was very good at looking like she believed things she didn't. And she gave Priya the look now, the one that said, we'll figure it out. And Priya took it and went back to the grill, because there was a ticket up, and the ticket didn't care about anybody's rent. The lunch pre-rush would start in an hour. Maeve pulled a fresh rag from under the counter and started wiping down the syrup bottles, one at a time, screwing each cap tight, wiping the sticky ring off the bottom, lining them back up on the shelf with the labels facing out. Small work. Work she could control. She did it slowly and she did it right. And while her hands moved, she let herself run the real numbers, the ones she kept on the inside, the ones that never showed. $41.60 in the napkin. Rent $800, Friday. Phone $22, Friday. 2 closing shifts a week if the pencil held. Maybe $60 in tips across both if she was lucky, and the weather was bad enough to keep people home and hungry. It didn't close. However she arranged it, it didn't close. Mr. Okafor turned a page of his crossword and, without looking up, slid a folded square of paper across the counter toward her. She unfolded it. 6 across, 7 letters, hidden strength. He'd left it blank and drawn a little arrow at it. He did this sometimes, handed her the ones he couldn't get, like a small gift, like a thing to think about that wasn't her own life. Reserve, she said, and wrote it in for him in her neat print. Strength you're holding back. He took the paper, studied it, nodded once. That's the one. He drank his coffee. He didn't know about the schedule. He didn't know she'd just done the arithmetic on her own life and come up short. He thought she was just the young woman who was good at crosswords and always had his cup filled before he had to ask. And Maeve let him think it, because letting people think you were fine was a kind of privacy, and privacy was one more thing she'd built and meant to keep. She lined up the last syrup bottle, label out, and looked at the row of them, straight and clean and pointless, and she thought, I have 4 days. Then she picked up the coffee pot, because Mr. Okafor's cup was low, and a woman could be scared or she could be on time. And Maeve poured the coffee with a steady hand and a steady face, and nobody in the whole warm, greasy room had any idea that the ground had just come out from under her. The morning went on the way mornings do. It didn't care. The laughing started before Maeve saw who was laughing. She had come out at 1:30, when the diner went quiet between the lunchbox and the afternoon coffee crowd, and Priya had pressed 2 crumpled bills into her hand and told her to run for a fresh sleeve of register tape because the old one had jammed twice that morning. The corner store sat past the plaza. The plaza was the short way. Maeve took the short way, the same diagonal her feet knew, apron still knotted at her waist because she had only meant to be gone 4 minutes. The 2 of them stood by the middle bench. One held a phone up high, turned sideways, the screen angled down. The other bent at the knees with his hands on his thighs, the way boys stand when they are watching something they want to remember. Both of them were laughing, that loud, open laugh that wants an audience. Maeve slowed. On the bench sat a man she had walked past that morning without seeing. She was sure she had walked past him. He had been part of the plaza, the way the dry fountain was part of the plaza, the way the broken slats were. Now he was the center of it. Gray rags layered over gray rags, a beard grown long and knotted, hair matted flat on one side where he had slept on it. His hands were black at the knuckles. He was trying to stand. That was the thing that stopped her feet. He had a grip on the arm of the bench, and he was pushing himself up slow, careful, like a man twice his age, and the blonde one kept stepping in to block the space in front of him, so he would have to sit back down. "Look at the camera, man. Say hi to the internet." The phone came in close, right up to the man's face. The blonde one held it there, 6 inches from the beard, and behind him, the shorter one wheezed and slapped his own knee. "Say something." "Say anything. Trash can't talk?" The word landed flat in the cold air. Maeve had crossed half the plaza before she decided to. She did not run. Running would have made it a chase, and a chase needed someone in the wrong to flee. She walked the way she walked, toward a table that had knocked over a full glass, quick and level, chin down, and she came in from the side so that when she stopped, she was between the phone and the man's face, her shoulder to the lens. The blonde one pulled the phone back a few inches. "Whoa, turn it off," Maeve said. "It's a public place." He grinned at her, then past her, checking that his friend was still filming his own angle. "Freedom of speech. You know what that is? I know what filming a man who can't stand up is." She kept her voice down. Low voices made people lean in, and leaning in made them listen. "Put it away." The shorter one had stopped laughing. He looked at his friend. The friend was still working the grin, but it had gone thin at the edges. The grin of somebody who had counted on nobody stopping. "We're not even touching him," the blonde one said. He said it to the plaza now, to the 2 women who had paused near the loyalty stand, to the old man folding his newspaper on the far bench. "We didn't do anything. Then it costs you nothing to leave." A moment sat there. Maeve did not fill it. She had learned that at the register, with the customers who wanted to argue about a charge until you talked yourself into giving them something, you let the silence do the pushing. You held the drawer closed and you waited. The blonde one lowered the phone. He thumbed the screen, and whatever he did there, the little red light on it went dark. "It's not even a good video," he said, to save the walk. He said something else to his friend, low, and the 2 of them peeled off toward the loteria stand, shoulders loose, laughing again once they had 10 steps of distance, the laugh smaller now and only for each other. The blonde one looked back once. Maeve was still watching him. He turned around and kept going. She let out a breath she had been holding under her ribs. The plaza filled its ordinary noise back in. A bus sighed at the far curb. The 2 women by the stand went back to whatever they had been saying. The old man opened his newspaper again, and the pages caught the wind and he folded it smaller. Nobody clapped, nobody came over. That was fine. Maeve had not done it for the plaza. She turned to the bench. The man had gotten himself upright at last, one hand still on the armrest, and he was looking at her. That was the first thing she noticed, that he was looking directly at her and not down, not away, the way she had half expected. His eyes were dark and set deep and very still. There was grime worked into the creases beside them. The beard hid most of his face. But the eyes were awake in a way the rest of him was not, and they moved once, quick, from her face to the corner where the 2 boys had gone, and then back to her face, reading her. "You didn't have to do that," he said. His voice came out rough and low, an unused sound, but the words were clean. No slur in them. She noted it and set it aside. "I know," she said. He was still holding the bench. She saw now that his knuckles were split, one of them, an old cut gone dark, and that under all the layers his shoulders were wide, wider than a man who lived on a bench had any business being. She noticed it the way you notice a wrong number in a column, a thing that does not add, and then she made herself stop noticing because a hungry man did not need her doing arithmetic on him. Something showed at his collar when he shifted his weight. The torn gray neckline pulled to one side, and there was ink on the skin there, black, curving up out of the cloth toward his jaw. Too much line and detail for a jailhouse scratch. A real piece of work half swallowed by the collar. She saw it for a second, then the cloth fell back. She held out her hand. Not to shake it. She had not planned it as a shake. Her hand came out palm up, open, the way you offer a hand to somebody who needs to get down off something, and she left it there in the space between them. He looked at it. He looked at her open palm the way a man looks at a thing he does not recognize. Not suspicion, exactly. Something slower than suspicion, as if a hand held out to him, flat and asking nothing, was a shape he had not been shown in a long time and had to work out from the beginning. The moment stretched. 2 seconds. 3. A muscle moved in his jaw under the beard. Then he took it. His hand was cold and rough and much larger than hers, and it closed around her fingers with a care that surprised her, none of the weight it could have put there, and he did not use her to pull himself up. He was already standing. He held her hand for the length of a breath, and then he let it go. "What's your name?" she said. He was quiet, a second too long. She watched him decide something. "Do-yun." She waited for the rest. There wasn't any rest. He offered the one word and closed his mouth on it, and there was something in the way he did it, a door shutting soft, that told her the one word was all she was going to get, and that it had cost him even that. "Do-yun," she said back, to have it right. He gave a small nod. "I'm Maeve." She glanced at the corner store across the plaza, then at the diner clock she could not see from here, the minutes she did not have. Priya would be watching the door. "When did you last eat?" The question moved something behind his eyes. He did not answer it. That was an answer. "Wait here," she said. "You don't." "I know I don't." She was already turning. "Wait here anyway." She crossed to the corner store faster than she had crossed the plaza, and inside she stood at the cold case and did the math without meaning to, the way she always did it now. The $41.60 wrapped in a napkin in her bag, the $800 that came due Friday, the $22 after it. 2 bottles of water, a wrapped sandwich, turkey, the biggest one on the shelf, a banana because her mother had always said a body that had gone without needed something soft and easy first, a second sandwich because one looked like an insult. She carried it to the counter and the boy there rang it up and it came to $11 and change, and she paid with Priya's register tape money and her own on top of it, and she did not let herself feel the $11 leave. She would feel it Thursday night. Not now. The register tape she almost forgot. She went back for it, a single sleeve, and had the boy ring that too. When she came out, he was still there. Part of her had expected him to be gone. Men in his shape did not always wait, and a stranger's promise to come back with food was a thin thread. But he stood by the bench where she had left him, hands loose at his sides, and when he saw her cross toward him with the plastic bag, he straightened a little, the hunch coming out of his back for a second, before it settled again. She held the bag out. He took it. He looked inside and went very still. "Water first," she said. "Small sips, or it'll come back up. Then the banana, sandwich after, and slow." He looked up at her over the bag. "You've done this before," he said. Once or twice, she had. She did not say for who or when. He did not ask, That was the first easy thing to pass between them. The way he took the sentence and let it stand, and did not dig at it, and she registered it, and did not know yet what to do with it. He got the cap off one bottle with hands that were not quite steady, and drank the way she'd told him, small, throat working, and she watched him make himself stop halfway and screw the cap back on and set the bottle down beside him on the bench like a thing to be rationed. A man who had been hungry before and knew how it worked. Another wrong number in the column. She let this one go too. "I have to get back," she said. "My shift. I only came out for—" She lifted the register tape and put it away. "I work at the diner, the one on the corner past the light. The sign's half burned out." He watched her. "I get off at 9, she said. "I close some nights. Not tonight. Tonight I'm off at 9. She was not sure why she was telling him the hours of her life. She heard herself do it. "If you're still around, I'll come back this way. I'll bring you something hot." There's soup at the end of the night they'd throw out anyway. "You don't have to come back. You keep telling me what I don't have to do." She said it without heat, almost a smile, and something in his face moved toward answering it, and stopped short of the whole way. "I heard you the first time." He looked down at the bag in his hands. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped lower, and it came out slower, like the words had to be chosen one at a time from somewhere far back. "People don't come back," he said. He was not asking her for anything. That was what she would think about later, walking the 3 blocks home in the dark, that he had said it the way a man reports the weather. No hook in it, no play for her pity. People don't come back. A fact he had tested and found reliable. He put it in front of her and left it there, and it was not a challenge and it was not a plea, and that was exactly why it caught under her skin and stayed. "I'm not people," Maeve said. She did not know where the words came from. They surprised her as much as him. He lifted his head and looked at her fully then, the stillness in his eyes cracking for half a second into something that had no name she wanted to put on it, and she felt the pull of it and stepped back from it, because she had a shift and a rent and a manager who was already looking for reasons, and because a woman who had built everything she had with her own 2 hands did not fall into a stranger's eyes in a public plaza at 1:30 on a Tuesday. 9 o'clock, she said, or a little after. Maeve, he said her name carefully, the way she had said his, getting it right. It was the first time he had used it. It sounded strange in his rough voice, softer than the rest of him. "Eat the banana first," she said, and turned and went. She felt him watching her the whole way across the plaza. She did not look back, because looking back was a thing you did when you weren't sure, and she wanted him to see a woman who was sure even if she wasn't, all the way to the light, and she let the crosswalk take her, and only then, on the far curb, with the diner sign coming up burned and crooked ahead of her, did she let herself think about what she had just done. She had spent $11 she did not have. She had told a strange man where she worked and what time she got off, and she had promised to come back after dark to a plaza that emptied out cold and quiet by 9, and she had done it looking straight into the face of a man whose hands were split at the knuckle and whose shoulders were built wrong for a beggar, and who had ink climbing his neck that no cheap needle had drawn. Her mother's voice went through her, the old one. You can be scared or you can be on time. Not both. She was going to be late. Priya was at the door when she came in, dish towel over her shoulder, and she took one look at Maeve's face and at the single sleeve of register tape and at the empty place in Maeve's hand where the change should have been, and she did not ask. She would ask later. Priya always asked later. "You were gone 20 minutes, Priya said. "I know." Ronnie clocked it. Let him. Maeve tied the apron she had never untied, tighter, and reached for the coffee pot, because table 6 had lifted a hand, and the afternoon closed back over her, the way afternoons do, the orders and the refills, and the drawer that stuck. But under it, all of it, the whole rest of the shift, some quiet part of her stood in the plaza in the cold, with her hand held out palm up, watching a man look at it like he'd forgotten what it was for. She kept catching herself looking at the clock. 9 o'clock came slow. It always did. She wiped down the syrup jars again at 8:40 because her hands needed doing, and at 8:50, Priya said something to her she didn't hear and had to repeat, and at 9, when the last foretop finally paid and left, and Priya killed the fryer, Maeve took the container of the day's leftover soup that would have gone in the bin and lidded it, and got a plastic spoon and put on her coat. "You want me to walk with you?" Priya said. She had figured most of it out by then. Priya usually did. "No," Maeve said. "It's fine. It's just the plaza. It's dark. It's 3 blocks. Priya looked at her a moment longer, and whatever she saw, she let it be. "Text me when you're home." Maeve went out into the cold with the warm container against her chest and the sign buzzing its broken letters over her head, and she turned toward the plaza where a man was either waiting or gone, and she found that she was walking faster than 3 blocks needed. He was still there. Maeve saw him from the mouth of the plaza, a shape on the middle bench, hunched the way he'd been hunched at 1 in the afternoon, except now the light was gone, and the fountain behind him held nothing but shadow. She slowed, not because she was afraid, because a part of her had spent the whole shift building the other version, the empty bench, the story that ended with her carrying warm soup home to eat alone at her own counter, and it took her a second to let that version go. She crossed to him with the container against her chest. "You waited," she said. He lifted his head. The overhead lamp caught the side of his face, the tangled beard, the eyes that stayed too steady for a man who'd been sitting in the cold for 8 hours. "You said 9, he said. "Or a little after." "It's 9:40. That's a little after." She almost smiled. She set the container on the bench beside him, peeled the lid, and the steam climbed between them. "It's the end of night soup. Chicken and rice. It was going in the trash." She held out the plastic spoon. "So don't thank me for it." He took the spoon. His hand moved slower than a hungry man's should, and she noticed it again, the control, the way he rationed himself even now. He ate 3 spoonfuls, stopped, breathed, ate 3 more. She sat at the far end of the bench and let him. The plaza was empty. The lottery stand had its shutter down. Somewhere past the far street, a bus sighed and pulled away, and the sound made her think of the $1.75 she hadn't spent, and then she made herself stop counting. "You didn't have to come," he said, between one mouthful and the next. "You keep telling me that. Because it's true." "It's true that I didn't have to," she said. "It stopped being interesting an hour ago." He looked at her over the container. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, buried under all that beard, and she decided it was closer to surprise than anything else. She waited until he'd eaten most of it. She'd learned that with her mother, near the end, that you don't ask a person anything real while they still have a spoon in their hand and their body is busy being grateful. So she watched the fountain and let him finish, and when he set the spoon down and the container was mostly empty, she turned on the bench to face him. "Do-yun," she said. "What happened to you?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm not asking for the police report," she said. "I'm asking because I'm about to make a stupid decision, and I'd like to make it with my eyes open." That got his attention. His head turned. For the first time all day she felt him actually look at her, not at the shoulder she'd put between him and the phone, not at the hand she'd held out, but at her, the whole person, the tired woman on a cold bench who'd said the word stupid about herself without flinching. "I had money," he said. She kept her face still. "I have money," he corrected. Slow, like the present tense cost him something. A house. People around me. All the time, people around me. He turned the empty spoon in his fingers. Everyone wanting something. A decision. A signature. A minute of my time that was never a minute. I woke up one morning and I couldn't find the part of me that used to want anything back. He set the spoon down on the bench with a care that didn't match the object. So I walked out. I didn't tell anyone. I just stopped being where they could find me. Maeve listened to all of it and believed the feeling and not one word of the rest. She'd heard versions of this before, from men at the counter at 2 in the afternoon, nursing the same coffee for an hour. The shape was always true, even when the facts were sanded off. She didn't need his facts, but she wasn't going to sit here and let him hand her the clean ending either. How long ago? She asked. Days. And what did walking out fix? He went quiet. That's not a trap, she said. I mean it. You disappeared. You're on a bench. Are you fixed? No, she agreed. Disappearing isn't the same as healing. I've watched people confuse the two. She thought of Denise, gone from the schedule, gone from everything, the way a name just stops appearing, and everyone lets it. You run far enough, you're still the one who shows up when you get there. His jaw shifted under the beard. He didn't argue. That was the thing she kept noticing, the way he received what she said, instead of defending against it, like a man who'd forgotten people were allowed to tell him things. She looked at the empty container. She looked at the dark street behind him, the 3 blocks between this bench and her apartment, and she ran the arithmetic one more time. The real arithmetic, the kind her mother meant. A stranger, a man twice her strength who ate like a soldier and had ink climbing his neck. Her own front door, the lease with her name on it, no cosigner, the thing she'd bled for. And a January night with a temperature that was going to drop. I have a couch, she said. He looked up sharply. Let me finish before you tell me I don't have to. She held up a hand. I have a couch. One night. You sleep on it. I sleep behind a door that locks. And I want you to hear the rest of this clearly, because it's the important part. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and made her voice the one she used with Ronnie. Level and unhurried and impossible to talk over. The second I feel unsafe, it's done. I don't warn you twice. I don't owe you an explanation. You'll be back on this bench before you finish asking why. If that's a deal you can take, take it. If not, I leave the container and I go home. And no hard feelings. He was silent for a long moment. Why? He said finally. Not a challenge, a real question. The way a child asks it. Because someone did it for me once, she said, and because I'd rather be a fool who was kind than smart and cold. I've tried cold. It didn't keep me warmer. He looked at his own hands, at the cracked knuckle, at the grime worked into the lines of his palm. When he lifted his head, there was something in his face she didn't have a name for, and she decided not to look for one. Okay, he said. Okay, she said, and stood, and picked up the container. It's 3 blocks. You walk on the outside. They walked. It took closer to 30 minutes than the 10 the distance deserved, because he moved carefully, favoring one side, and she matched his pace without saying anything about it. She kept half a step ahead, so she was leading, and half a step to the side, so he was never behind her. And if he understood the geometry of it, he didn't remark on it. The streets narrowed as they went, the storefronts giving way to walk-ups with buzzers, laundry lines strung across the gaps, a cat watching them from a windowsill. He asked her one thing on the walk. The man on the phone this morning, the one who called about your schedule. She stopped half a step. How do you know about that? You said it, in the plaza. You said your manager. You said you get off at 9. A pause. You count things when you think no one's watching. Coins. You did it on the bench. Just now. when the bus left. She started walking again, faster. You notice a lot for a man who fell apart. That's the part that didn't fall apart, he said, and she didn't know yet how true that was. Her building was the third on the left, 4 floors, the entry light out again. She unlocked the street door, then the inner one, then led him up 2 flights, one hand trailing the rail, listening to his tread behind her, testing it against everything she knew about being alone with a stranger. His step was even. He kept distance. When she stopped at her door, he stopped 4 feet back, near the top of the stairs, giving himself no advantage, and her the whole landing, and she noticed that too, and filed it with the rest of the things about him that didn't fit. Inside, the apartment was 1 room and a half. She turned on the lamp, not the overhead. Bathroom's there, she said. There's hot water if you're quick about it. Towel on the hook is clean. She pointed at the couch. That's yours. I'll get a blanket. He stood just inside the door like he'd forgotten how rooms worked. His eyes went over the place, the second-hand couch, the 2 mugs drying by the sink, the calendar with shifts penciled in, the single-framed photo on the shelf, and she watched him take an inventory that wasn't about what things were worth. He was reading her, the same way he'd read the schedule out of one overheard sentence. Go wash, she said, gentler than she meant to. You'll feel human. He went. She heard the water run. She stood in her own kitchen with her back to the counter and her arms crossed and her phone in her hand, and she texted Priya the word home because she'd promised, and left out every other fact. Then she pulled a blanket and a spare pillow from the closet and set them on the arm of the couch, and she changed out of the pink top and the apron into the cobalt knit and black leggings, socks on the cold floor, and she put the kettle on for something to do with her hands. The water shut off. A few minutes later, he came out. She'd been ready for the beard to still be there, and it was, matted and dark and dripping. She hadn't been ready for the rest of him. He'd washed the grime off his hands, and his face and his neck, and without the street on him, the man underneath was a different proposition. He stood straighter, now that he wasn't performing the hunch, and the wet shirt clung, and she saw what the rags had been hiding. Not a man wrecked by hunger, a frame kept, shoulders and forearms that came from work, deliberate work, the kind you choose and repeat. He held himself the way certain men at the counter held themselves, the ones who'd been in the service or worse, a stillness that was really readiness. And the tattoo. Clean now, the ink stood out against his throat, black lines climbing the left side of his neck, coiling up from below the collar toward the jaw. She'd seen the edge of it in the plaza and told herself it didn't mean anything. In her lamplight, it meant something. It was too much work, too fine, too old, to belong to a man who slept on benches. Nobody paid for that and then let their life come apart around it. He caught her looking. He didn't cover it. You're not what you were an hour ago, she said. Neither are you. He nodded at the couch, the blanket, the pillow. An hour ago you were deciding. Now you've decided. She poured the kettle out, 2 mugs, tea because it was what she had, and set one on the low table near the couch, keeping the table between them. Sit, she said. He sat. She stayed standing. I'm going to ask you one thing, she said, and I want the true answer, not the sad story answer. You're good at the sad story answer. His hand paused on the mug. Are you in trouble? She said. The apartment was quiet enough to hear the radiator tick. Yes, he said. She'd known it. Hearing it still moved something cold through her chest. She kept her voice steady. The kind that follows you here? He looked at her across the little table, across the steam, and for the first time, he didn't ration anything. The kind that could, he said, but it won't touch you. Whatever happens, no one reaches you through me. I can promise you that one thing and mean it, even if I can't promise you anything else. That's not yours to promise. It's the only thing that is. She held his eyes for a long moment. She thought about the man in the plaza calling him trash, the phone in his face, and she thought about a person who could make a promise like that, in a voice like that, and mean it, and about how those two men were somehow the same man, and about how far she was from understanding the distance between them. "Drink your tea," she said. "Sleep. You leave in the morning." "I know. I mean it. I have an early shift." "I know," he said again, and something in the way he said it told her he'd already decided to be gone before she had to say goodbye, and she was too tired to argue with a kindness. She took her mug behind the half-wall to the mattress, and she lay down in her clothes with the lamp off and the door of her mind still open, listening. For a long time she heard nothing from the other room but the radiator and, once, the small sound of a grown man breathing out slow in the dark, like a person setting a weight down. She lay awake longer than she meant to, doing the only arithmetic that mattered now, which had stopped being about dollars. She thought, a man with a body like that, and ink like that, and a promise like that, does not end up on my couch by accident. She thought, I should be more afraid than I am. She turned that one over and couldn't make it frighten her, and eventually the day caught up with her and pulled her under. She woke before her alarm to gray light, and a quiet that was different from the quiet she'd fallen asleep in. The couch was empty, the blanket was folded, corners squared, the pillow set on top, more precise than she folded her own. The two mugs were washed and drying by the sink, upside down, next to hers. For a second, the apartment felt scrubbed of him, like she'd dreamed the whole thing, the plaza and the soup and the promise, and she stood in her socks in the cold and felt the pull of the empty room the way she'd felt the pull of the empty bench. Then she saw the paper. It was on the low table where his tea had been, a torn corner of the notepad she kept by the phone for grocery lists, folded once. She picked it up. The handwriting was careful, upright, the letters of a man taught to write by someone strict. "Thank you for coming back," it said. "You were right. Running isn't the same as fixing. I'm going to go do the harder thing instead." And under it, one word, the only signature he'd ever given her, the same single word he'd handed her in the plaza, like it was all he had left to give. Do-yoon. She stood there in the gray light with the torn paper in her hand and the folded blanket across the room, and she did not know that she was holding the last quiet morning she would have for a long time. She read it twice. She put it in the inside pocket of her bag, the one with the zipper, next to nothing, and she got dressed for a shift that didn't yet know the floor had already moved under all of them. The black car was already at the curb when Maeve turned onto her own street, and she almost walked past it, the way she walked past everything she couldn't afford to look at. It didn't belong there, not on a block of dented sedans and a pickup with a tarp for a back window. The car sat too clean, too long, too quiet, engine off, no one leaning on it. She clocked it in half a second and kept moving, keys already threaded between her fingers the way she always carried them the last stretch home. Then a door opened, the rear one, on the far side. A man stepped out and buttoned a jacket over a vest, and the motion was so smooth it stopped her before her brain caught up to why. Charcoal suit, white shirt, a tie so dark it read black. Polished shoes that had never once touched the floor of a bus. He came around the front of the car without hurrying, and he stood on the sidewalk with a hand at his side and something wrapped in paper cradled in the other arm, and he looked at her like he'd been waiting a long time to be allowed to. Maeve stopped 6 feet away, keys still in her fist. "Can I help you?" she said, flat, not a question that wanted an answer. He didn't step closer. Maeve? Her name. The way he said it. 2 beats, the second one lower. She'd heard that exact weight on those exact 2 syllables in a dark park with a container of end-of-night soup between them. She'd heard it in her own apartment over 2 mugs of tea. Her stomach dropped a floor before her eyes finished the work, before she made herself look past the suit to the jaw under it, the jaw that had been buried in a filthy beard 12 hours ago and was now trimmed down to clean dark stubble, hair pushed back off a forehead she'd only ever seen greasy and hanging. And at the throat, above the collar's edge, a thin, dark curve of ink she would have known anywhere. "No," she said. It came out before anything else. Not a greeting, a refusal. "I know," he said. "You don't get to." She stopped. Started again, quieter. Which was worse? "You slept on my couch. You ate soup out of a takeaway box. You left a note on the back of my grocery list. All of that is true. Look at your shoes." He glanced down at them, then back up, and he didn't defend the shoes. That was the thing that kept her standing there instead of going inside. He didn't perform surprise, didn't spread his hands, didn't do the thing men did where they made you feel unreasonable for seeing exactly what was in front of you. "You lied to me," she said. "I didn't say one thing that was false." His voice stayed level. "I said I had money. I said there were people around me who wanted things. I said I walked out. Every word of that was true. You let me buy you a sandwich." For the first time, something moved in his face. Not much. A tightening at the corner of the eye. "Yes," he said. "I did." The driver's door hadn't opened. Through the windshield, she could see the shape of a second man behind the wheel. Big, shaved head, still as furniture, eyes forward, not watching her, which somehow meant he was watching everything. She catalogued him the way she catalogued the exits of any room she couldn't leave fast. "Who's that?" she said, tipping her chin at the car. "Tayo." A pause. "He works for me. He'll stay in the car." She almost laughed, and it wasn't a good sound. "He works for you." Maeve. He shifted the paper-wrapped bundle in his arm, and she realized it was flowers, wrapped properly, the kind that came from a place with a name, and not a bucket outside a bodega. He didn't hold them out. He seemed to understand, standing there, that holding them out would end this. "You asked me one question in your apartment. You asked if I was in trouble. I told you the truth. You told me the promise I made wasn't mine to make. You were right about that too. Don't do that." Her jaw set. "Don't hand me back my own words like a gift." He went quiet. The street did its ordinary morning things around them. A woman 2 doors down shook a rug over a railing. A kid dragged a backpack toward the corner. None of them looked twice at the car, and that felt insane to her, that the whole block wasn't stopping to see this. "I have a shift," she said, "in 40 minutes. I'll drive you, or I won't, if you'd rather walk. I'm not here to move you anywhere you don't want to go. I'd rather you tell me what you are." She heard her own voice steady out into something colder than fear. Not the feeling, not the tired of everyone thing. What you are. Because a man doesn't sleep in a park in rags for days with a car like that, 40 minutes from where I live, unless the thing he's hiding from is bad enough to be worth it. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he set the flowers on the hood of the car, gently, like they'd stopped being the point, and he put both hands loose at his sides where she could see them. "My name is Seo Do-yun," he said. That part was real. "My family runs businesses, a lot of them. Some of them are legal, shipping, property, restaurants, a lending company. Some of them are not." "Not," she repeated. "Not." He held her eyes while he said it. "The kind of organization that people write about carefully, if they write about it at all. My grandfather built it. My father ran it. When my father died, it came to me. I've run it for 9 years." The word he wasn't using sat in the air between them, and she made him feel it there, the way she'd made Bradley feel the silence in the park. "Say it," she said. A muscle worked in his jaw. You know the word. I want to hear you use it, not me. Korean Mafia. He said it plainly, without weight, without any of the low charm men used when they wanted the danger to be attractive. He said it like a fact on a form. That's what it is. I'm not going to dress it up for you. I've hurt people. I've ordered worse than I've done with my own hands. I have enemies who would use anyone I care about to reach me, which is the one thing I promised you couldn't happen, and I meant it, and I'm still not certain I can keep it. That's the truth, all of it. Maeve realized she'd stopped breathing and made herself start again. Everything reorganized behind her eyes. Not the note, not the couch, the whole thing. The man on the bench had never been a man on a bench. The soup, the walk, the careful 3 spoonfuls and a pause. She'd built a story about a broken person she could help. And the story had been true only in the way he'd already told her it was true, in the feeling, and false in every fact underneath. It hadn't been about a beggar. It had never once been about a beggar. She thought she should feel like a fool. She waited to feel like a fool. What she felt instead was the floor of her own life tilting toward a door she had every reason to lock. Why? She said. Why the park? Why Rags? You have a car and a driver and a… She gestured at all of him, the suit, the whole restored architecture of him. You could have gone anywhere, any country, a beach, a hole in a wall in a nice part of the city. You chose a bench and a beard and a boy filming you for the internet. Because in the suit, he said, everyone finds me. In the rags, for a week, nobody did. He let that sit. For 6 days, I was no one. Do you understand what that's worth, to be no one, when you've been a name that everyone wants a piece of since you were 19? I wasn't trying to die on that bench. I was trying to find out if there was anything left of me when nobody needed anything from me. And a woman I'd never met put her shoulder between me and a phone and asked my name. His voice didn't crack. It did something quieter than cracking. You didn't want anything from me. You bought me water. You told me running wasn't the same as fixing. You were the first person in 9 years who was kind to nothing, to no one, to a man with no money and no name. Maeve's throat closed and she hated it. Hated that the thing she wanted least, to be moved by him, was happening in her body without her permission. That's not a reason to be here, she said. That's a reason to leave me out of it. I know. Then why the flowers? Why the car on my street, where those people you talked about can see it? The car came because I didn't know how else to prove I wasn't lying anymore. He didn't reach for the flowers. And you're right about the street. It was a mistake. Teo already told me it was a mistake. I did it anyway because I wanted you to see me clearly one time before you decided. You deserve to decide with your eyes open, not the way I let you decide in the park. She looked at the car, at the still man behind the wheel, at the wrapped flowers on the hood, already looking wrong there, too soft for the metal. You want something, she said. Everyone wants something. You just told me that's the whole disease of your life. So don't stand on my sidewalk and tell me you're the exception. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth and left. You're the only person who'd say that to my face. Answer it. I want to know you, he said. That's the whole of it. And I know how small it sounds against everything I just told you. I'm not asking you to be part of anything I do. I'm not asking you to keep a secret or carry a risk. I came to tell you the truth because you gave me a bed without knowing it, and you should get to unknow me now if that's what you want. If you tell me to leave, the car leaves, and you never see me again. I'll make sure of it. That I can promise, and it is mine to promise. The 40 minutes were shrinking. She could feel the shift pulling at her. Ronnie's schedule, the drawer, the ordinary weight of a Wednesday that didn't care that a Mafia boss was standing on her sidewalk, with flowers he had the sense not to hand her. Every part of her that had signed a lease alone with a shaking hand said the same thing. Lock the door. A man who has hurt people, who has enemies, who buys a car to prove he isn't lying. That man is a bill you cannot afford, and you have 4 days and $41 and a schedule that already wants you gone. She opened her mouth to say leave. No, she said instead, and then heard herself, and pressed her lips shut, furious, because that no had been aimed at her own good sense, and not at him. He waited. He was very good at waiting. She understood, suddenly, that the waiting was the most honest thing about him, a man who could have anything, standing still, letting a diner cashier take her time deciding whether he existed. Here's what happens, she said finally, and her voice came out the way it came out with Ronnie, low and counted. I'm not getting in that car. I'm not taking the flowers. I have a shift, and I'm walking to it, alone, the way I walk everywhere. All right. And I'm not saying yes to any of this. She pointed at the car, the driver, the whole impossible morning. To that. To what you are. I heard what you are. I'm not pretending I didn't. I don't want you to pretend. But the word cost her something. She spent it anyway. You told me the truth when telling me a lie would have been easier and cleaner and got you further. Nobody in my life has ever picked the harder true thing over the easy false one when I couldn't check either way. She swallowed. So you get one conversation, not a car, not a date, not flowers, a conversation, somewhere I choose, in daylight, where I can walk out. Do-yoon went still in a different way, not the readiness she'd seen in her apartment, something that had been braced for a door in the face and hadn't gotten it. Where? He said. The diner, where I work. You sit in a booth like anyone else, you order coffee, you pay for it, and you talk to me on my 10-minute break. She lifted her chin. If you can't be a person in a booth, in a place with a burnt-out sign, then you can't be a person to me, and we'll both know it fast. When? She thought about it. 2 o'clock was the dead hour, the soft belly of the afternoon, when the operators were back on their sites, and the register slept between rushes. It was also the hour Ronnie took his own break in the back, with the ledger, and a cigarette he pretended he didn't smoke. If a strange man in a suit sat in a booth at 2, nobody would circle him, nobody would remember him. She surprised herself, planning it that carefully, planning it at all. You don't get to know my whole schedule. Almost a smile from her now, and she killed it. Come in around 2, when the lunch rush breaks. If I have time, I'll come to your table. If I don't, you drink your coffee and you leave, and you don't come back. Those are the rules. Those are good rules, he said quietly. I don't need you to grade them. No, he inclined his head. You don't. She stepped around him, giving the car a wide berth, keys still laced in her fingers. Out of a habit she wasn't ready to drop, just because a man in a good suit looked at her like she'd handed him something. She got 4 steps down the sidewalk before she stopped, without turning around. The flowers go home with you, she said to the street in front of her. Give them to somebody who wants something from you. Should be easy. You've got a whole organization. Behind her, after a beat, she heard the soft sound of paper being lifted off a car hood. Maeve. Just her name again. She didn't turn. Thank you. For the conversation. And for the couch. I'll pay for my own coffee. You'd better, she said, and made herself walk. 3 blocks, alone, the way she walked everywhere, past the laundromat, and Sal's plants, and the corner where the light took forever, and she didn't look back once, and her heart went the whole way like she'd been running, though her feet kept an even, ordinary pace that gave nothing away to anyone watching from a clean black car that stayed at the curb until she was out of sight. She was at the diner by 9. She tied on the apron. She served Mr. Okafor his coffee with a hand that did not shake, and when Priya caught her eye across the pass and mouthed, "You okay?" Maeve gave one nod and turned to the register and thought about a booth and 2 o'clock and a man who'd chosen the hard, true thing, and how the worst part wasn't that he'd found her. The worst part was that some small, reckless, unpaid-for corner of her was already counting down to the lunch rush breaking. He came back the next afternoon, and he paid for his coffee. He took the third booth from the door, the one with the wobbling table, and he sat like a man who had all the time he'd never had before. Black suit, clean stubble, a folded newspaper he didn't read. When Maeve set the cup down, he wrapped both hands around it and let it go cold. "You're not drinking it," she said. "I like watching you work." She almost told him that wasn't an answer. Then a family of 4 came through the door, and she went, and he stayed, and that became the shape of the thing. He arrived near the end of the lunch rush. He ordered something small. He waited out her 10 minutes, and when the 10 minutes ended, he stood, thanked her, and left before Ronnie could clock a face he didn't know. It happened 4 days running. Priya started sliding his coffee across the pass without being asked. "Booth 3's back," she'd murmur. "I see him. He tips like the money embarrasses him." Maeve saw that too. A 20 under the saucer for a $2 cup, folded small, tucked so she'd find it after he was gone. She stopped fighting it after the second time. She put it in the shared jar with Priya's name on her lips, and Priya pretended not to do the math. On the 5th afternoon, she caught the thing she'd been circling. He was watching the door, not the way a man watches for someone, the way a man watches a door he's decided not to be surprised by. And under his eyes, in the flat light of the diner, the skin had gone the color of old bruises. "You don't sleep," she said. She said it standing, coffee pot in hand, so it wouldn't land like a question he could dodge. His thumb stopped on the rim of the cup. "Not much." "Since when?" "Since I stopped needing to be anywhere at 6 in the morning." He turned the cup a quarter. The body forgets how to stop when nothing makes it. She thought of her own alarm, the gray light, the folded blanket with square corners. She didn't say it. "I'm ending some things," he said, lower. "It takes longer than starting them." "What things?" He looked at her a moment, weighing what a woman with a coffee pot was allowed to carry out of a booth. "Arrangements," he said, "the kind that only worked because people were afraid. I'm taking the fear out, slowly, so nobody dies of the change." She set the pot back on its burner and came back with her hands empty, which was its own kind of sitting down. "Why slow?" she said. "Because fast is how you get a war." He almost smiled. "I've had enough of those to know the difference." Priya rang the bell. Maeve went. When she came back, the 20 was under the saucer and the booth was empty, and she stood there longer than the tables allowed, holding a folded bill she hadn't earned, feeling the floor of her own life tilt another degree toward a door she had every reason to lock. The man with the rimless glasses came on a Tuesday. He came alone at 2:40 in a navy suit that had been pressed that morning, and he ordered tea he didn't want. He was soft where Do-yun was hard, rounded at the jaw, thinning at the crown, and he smiled the whole time, a small, controlled, permanent smile that never once reached the top of his face. He waited until Maeve refilled the sugar caddy at his table. "Miss Alcott," he said. Her hand stopped over the caddy. She had never told anyone in this diner her last name. "You have me at a disadvantage," she said. "Seo Junsuk." He turned a gold ring on his finger, unhurried. "I manage the family's legitimate concerns. Do-yun is my cousin." She kept pouring sugar. The stream stayed level. "He hasn't mentioned you," she said. "He wouldn't." "That's rather the point of me." The smile widened by a degree. "May I have 3 minutes?" Sit, don't sit. I only ask that you listen, because I don't think anyone else in your life is going to tell you these things, and I would hate for you to learn them the expensive way. She did not sit. She set the caddy down and folded her arms, which he seemed to take as permission. He laid a folder on the table. He did it gently, the way you set down something you want someone to open on their own. I run background on people who come close to my cousin, he said. It's not personal, it's hygiene. You're 23, you rent a one-bedroom under your own name, which is rarer than you think and speaks well of you. You've never been arrested. You give food to people who can't pay you back. He tapped the folder once. You are, by every measure I have, a good person. That is precisely the problem. Say the thing you came to say. The thing I came to say is in here. He slid the folder an inch toward her. Not rumors. Not the version he gives you at 2 p.m. over cold coffee. Records. Names of men who are not alive because of decisions my cousin signed. Shipments. A warehouse in 2019. A man named Beck who informed for the police and was found in a river. Unquote. The smile held, terrible and calm. He'll have told you he's ending it. Ending it doesn't undrown Mr. Beck. Maeve looked at the folder and did not touch it. Why show me? Because a man like Do-yun, when he decides he wants something soft in his life, doesn't count the cost to the soft thing. Jun-suk folded his manicured hands. You are a weakness, Miss Alcott. I mean that in the technical sense. The moment his enemies understand what you are to him, you become the cheapest way to hurt him. And they will not send me. They will not bring a folder and a cup of tea. Do you understand? She understood. Her stomach understood before her mouth did. Take him back to whatever he came from, Jun-suk said, standing, buttoning his jacket. Not for my sake, for yours. You built a life with your own hands. It would be a shame to lose it over a man who has never in his life lost anything he didn't choose to. He left a bill on the table. Exact, no tip. The folder is yours. Read it or burn it. Either way, now, you can't say no one told you. He walked out into the gray afternoon, and the diner went on ringing and clattering around Maeve, who was standing very still over a navy folder she had not opened and could not seem to stop looking at. She opened it that night, at her own table, under the one lamp. She read every page. Some of it was numbers she didn't understand. Some of it was names and dates, and the flat institutional language of things that had actually happened. And one page had a photograph, and she closed the folder on that page and sat with her hands flat on the cover for a long time, and she did not cry, because crying felt like a thing she hadn't earned the right to yet. He was in booth 3 the next afternoon. She didn't bring coffee. She sat down across from him, which she had never done, and she put the folder on the table between them, closed. His eyes went to it. Something moved behind his face, and then went still. He came to you, Do-yun said. Yesterday, 2:40, tea he didn't drink. She kept her voice even. Seo Jun-suk, your cousin. He knew my last name before I said it. What did he give you? Records. She pressed one finger on the folder. A warehouse. A man in a river. Names of people who aren't people anymore because you signed something. She watched his hands. Is it true? He could have moved the folder. He could have said Jun-suk curated it. That context changes everything. That the man in the river was an informant who'd have gotten his own people killed. All of it was even true. Yes, he said. One word. No softening around it. All of it. The facts in there are facts. His jaw worked. The story he built out of them is his. But you didn't ask for the story. You asked if it's true. It's true. She'd braced for a defense. The absence of one hit harder. You knew, she said, when you were on my sofa, when you drank the soup, When you let me buy you a sandwich with money I didn't have. You knew there was a folder like this with your name on it. Yes, and you didn't say. No. His hands were flat on the table now, mirroring hers around the thing neither of them would open. I told you I was in trouble. I told you the kind that could follow me. What I didn't tell you. He stopped. Started again, quieter. What I didn't tell you is that the trouble isn't outside me. It's the ledger. It's mine. I was afraid that if you saw the whole page, you'd stop before we started. So you let me start blind. Yes. He held her eyes. That was the cowardice. Not the tattoo. Not the men. The waiting. I let you walk toward me without a map because I wanted the walk more than I wanted you safe. That's the true thing your folder doesn't have in it. She had come in braced for a fight, and he had refused to give her one, and somehow that was worse. You couldn't push against a man who put his own weight on the blade. I need to not see you for a while, she said. It cost her. He heard what it cost. Okay, he said. Don't send anyone. Don't fix it. Don't. Her voice caught and she flattened it. Don't decide anything for me. I've had enough of that from Ronnie. Okay, he said again. And he stood. And he left the 20 under the saucer. And he was gone before she could take it back. She told herself the emptiness in the booth was relief. She was still telling herself that 3 days later. The car came on the 4th day. Not the black sedan, a gray one, parked across from the diner at the top of the lunch rush. 2 men in it who did not get out, and did not order anything, and did not stop watching the door. Priya saw them first. Those 2 have been there an hour, she said, at the pass, not moving her lips. They watched you carry the trash out. Maeve looked once. One of them met her eyes and did not look away, which is a thing strangers don't do. They were gone by 3. They were back the next morning, before she'd unlocked, standing near the corner where her diagonal cut through the square. 2 different men now, hands in their pockets, faces she'd never seen. One of them nodded at her. Not a threat, worse than a threat, an acknowledgement. Like she was a thing they'd been assigned to. At the corner of her own block that evening, there was a 3rd car she didn't know, and a man leaning on it, who straightened when she came out of the building the next morning, and then made a small show of not looking at her. She counted them. 4 faces in 2 days. None of them Teo, whose scar she'd have known. She understood what she was looking at before she let herself say it. She'd told him not to fix it. He had fixed it. She walked to the gray car parked across from the diner on the 3rd morning and knocked on the window with one knuckle. The glass came down. The man inside was young, flat-faced, careful. "Who do you work for?" she said. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His eyes flicked once, involuntary, toward his phone on the seat, and she saw the name on the screen before he turned it face down. And the name was 3 letters she'd written on a torn piece of shopping list. "Tell him to call me," she said, "now." Her phone rang before she was back inside. "You put men on me," she said. She was standing in the little vestibule between the 2 doors, the one place in the diner where nobody could hear. 4 of them. On my street. On my square. On the corner where I buy my bus pass. You put men on me after I asked you. There were people asking about you." His voice was low, fast, the voice of a man who'd rehearsed being right. "Not mine. I found out Thursday. Junsuk's visit wasn't a warning to you, Maeve. It was a flag to everyone watching him. The moment he walked into your diner, you were on a list. I did the only thing. You decided." The line went quiet. "I kept you alive," he said. "You decided." Her hand was shaking, and she pressed it flat against the cold wall to stop it. "You found out there was a danger, and instead of telling me, instead of letting me choose what I do with my own life, you put a fence around me in the dark and let me walk into it. You made me a thing to be guarded. Do you understand what that is? Do you have any idea? Her voice broke, and she caught it, hauled it back down. There is a whole life I built, so that no one would ever get to decide where I stand again. And you didn't ask. You just moved me, like furniture, like your cousin moves numbers. Maeve. That's the thing, isn't it? The realization arrived even as she said it, cold and clean. You said you ran because everyone wanted to decide things through you. You hated it so much you slept on a bench for 6 days to get away from it. And the first time you love something, you do the exact same thing to me that they did to you. You just do it in the other direction. The silence on the line was total. I would rather, she said, and now her voice was steady, which frightened her more than the shaking had. I would rather be in danger and free than safe and owned. You don't get to keep me alive by taking the one thing that made my life mine. Then they'll use you, he said, and for the first time she heard the fear under the discipline. Do you understand that? They will come, and they will not knock, and I will not be able to. Then I'll be afraid, she said. That's mine too. You don't get to spend it for me. She hung up. She stood in the vestibule with her back against the cold wall and her heart going like a fist on a door, and through the inner glass she could see Priya at the pass, and Mr. Okafor bent over his crossword, and the whole small warm room she had built one shift at a time, and outside the outer glass, across the street, the gray car with the flat-faced young man in it, watching the door. She had told him she'd rather be free than owned. She meant it. And she had never in her life felt so alone with a thing she meant. The gray car didn't move. She pushed off the wall, tied her apron, and went back to work, because there were tables, and because the rent was still $800, and because the one thing no one had managed to take from her yet was the fact that she still showed up. She poured Mr. Okafor's coffee. Her hand was steady. Nobody in the room could have guessed that somewhere in a black car across a city, a man who had given up sleeping was learning that the thing he'd done to save her was the one thing certain to lose her, and that neither of them, now, could see any door out of it that didn't cost more than they had. Maeve counted the drawer wrong twice that Thursday, and the second time she stopped and stared at the number like it had insulted her. She never counted wrong. 400 mornings, and the gray car still parked across from the diner door, and her hands had gone unsteady enough to lose $11 between one tally and the next. She breathed out. She started again. Penny stacks, bill stacks, the receipt spool she always kept because Ronnie never did. The receipt spool was the thing that saved her. She was matching the day's tape against the register total, the boring closing chore no one else at the diner bothered with, when a habit older than her fear kicked in. A cashier reads numbers the way a mother reads a fever. She had done it for 4 years. Small inconsistencies, a total that lands 1 digit off, a subtotal that doesn't carry. Her eye caught them without asking permission. And there, on a slip of paper that had nothing to do with the diner, one caught her. She hadn't meant to keep it. It had fallen out of the Navy folder the night she read it, and couldn't look at the photograph. A single printed page half tucked behind the rest. A summary sheet, a column of transfers, a corporate ledger line she wasn't supposed to understand. She had shoved it in the zippered pocket with the note. Now it sat next to the register tape while she waited for the coffee to drip, and her cashier's eye did the thing it always did. A number that didn't carry. One figure at the bottom of a column that did not equal the figures above it, not by much, by the kind of margin a tired man signs without checking, by the kind of margin that, multiplied across years, buys a second life. Maeve set down the register tape. She picked up the page. She read the column 3 times, the way she'd read the address on the thin envelope once, slower each pass, and the floor of the thing tilted under her, the way her own life had tilted on the curb 2 mornings ago. Junseok had handed her these papers to prove Do-yoon was a monster. He hadn't imagined a diner cashier would add them up. She didn't call Do-yoon. She'd told him not to fix things, and she wasn't going to hand him a rescue to perform. She wanted to be sure first, so she did what she did with the schedule, with the rent, with everything that frightened her. She wrote the numbers down. On the back of a shopping list sheet, the same pad the note had come from, she copied the column, the odd total, the date on the page. Then she looked at it until it stopped being a feeling and became a fact. The fact was small and enormous. The legitimate concerns, the shipping, the property, the lending company, the restaurants, the clean half Junseok managed and wore like a suit, had a leak in them. A steady one, old, routed through the exact accounts a man in charge of legitimate concerns would touch, and no one else would. Priya found her still standing there at 9. "You're gray," Priya said. "Sit down." "I need to make a phone call," Maeve said. "Not tonight. Tomorrow." "Is it him?" "It's the thing that's been eating him," Maeve said, and she wasn't sure until she said it out loud how certain she'd become. Do-yoon had spent 9 years believing he was tired. He had told her the truth in the square, the emotional truth without the facts, that he'd woken one day with the part that wanted things worn down to nothing. He'd believed it was him, a weakness in the blood, the thing that eventually breaks every man who inherits instead of builds. He had gone to a bench to find out if anything of him survived when no one needed anything from him. What he learned from Maeve's phone call the next afternoon rearranged 9 years in a single minute. She read him the column. She read him the date. She told him where she'd found the page and what a total that doesn't carry means to a woman who has closed a register 400 times. And on the other end of the line, in the black car, a man who had given up sleeping went very quiet. "Say the account number again," Do-yoon said. She said it. "That account," he said, "was closed in 2021. I signed the order myself." "It's moving money this year," Maeve said. The silence after that had weight. Then, low, "Who told me to close it?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both already knew the shape of the man who managed what was legitimate, who ran background checks on strangers in diners, who had spent months telling a tired heir that the family was unstable, that decisions couldn't wait, that solutions weren't ready. A man who filtered every piece of information that reached Do-yoon and let through only the pieces that made the exhaustion worse. The tiredness had been real. It had also been fed. For months. Fabricated crises timed to arrive when he was lowest. Relatives set against him by a whisper he never heard the source of. Solutions hidden so problems could rot into evidence of his unfitness. Someone had been building a case that the throne needed a steadier hand. The traitor had been inside the circle the whole time, close enough to sign for him, close enough to point Maeve out as a weakness, because a man who has embezzled for years fears nothing so much as a person who reads receipts. "Do-yoon," Maeve said, "what are you going to do?" He was quiet a moment. "The harder thing," he said. Again. The succession meeting was called for the following week, in a glass room high over the river, and Junseok arrived first, because men who plan to take things always arrive first. He had the papers. He had the relatives. 3 of them, uncles and a cousin, seated along one side, arranged by weeks of careful poison into a jury that already had a verdict. He had the half-smile and the pocket square and the signet ring he turned on his finger when he was pleased. He had, he believed, an air so hollowed out by his own exhaustion that he would hand over the empire to be relieved of it. Do-yoon came in without a folder. He wore the charcoal suit, the dragon disciplined under the collar, and he carried nothing, and Teo stood at the door in black with his hands folded, and that was all. Junseok's smile widened at the empty hands. Empty hands meant surrender. "Cousin," Junsuk said, rising, gracious in victory. We've all seen it. The absences, the disappearance, a week where no one could find you, and a stranger who now knows more about this family than any of us approved. He spread his manicured hands to the seated men. I say this with love. You are not well, and an organization cannot wait on a man's recovery. The uncles nodded. The cousins studied the table. Do-yun let him finish. Then he said one sentence. Read the halcyon account to the room. Junsuk's finger stopped turning the ring. It was closed in 2021, Do-yun went on, evenly. To the uncles, not to Junsuk. I have the order. It moved $400,000 last quarter. It has moved money every quarter for 6 years. Through accounts only one person touches. He didn't raise his voice. He never had needed to. The instability you've been told about is real. It has one source, and it is not me. Tayo crossed the room and set a single folder in front of the eldest uncle. Not Do-yun's word. Records. The dead account breathing. The transfers laddering down through subsidiaries and back up into a private name. The clean half of the family, skimmed for years by the man they'd been convinced to crown. The eldest uncle read. He was slow. He read like Maeve read, twice, and then he looked up not at Do-yun but at Junsuk, and the room's gravity moved 6 feet sideways and did not come back. That's forged, Junsuk said. His voice had gone thin. He's had a week with a waitress, and now there's a document. A cashier, Do-yun said. She closes a register every night. She found it because you handed it to her. The half-smile was gone. What replaced it was the face underneath, which had never been calm at all, only managed. He looked to the uncles for the jury he'd built and found them reading. The cousin had turned his chair a degree away. The poison, exposed, had nowhere left to be but in the man who'd poured it. Junsuk reached for the last thing. Even so, you can't run this without me. The legitimate side is mine. The banks know me. Pull me out and the whole clean half. I know, Do-yun said. I'm letting most of it go. The room stopped. This was the part no one had planned for, because no one plans for a man to walk toward less. Do-yun laid it out without heat. The compromised operations, the ones that only worked through fear, the ones with blood in the ledger. He was handing off, unwinding, cutting loose. The illegal ties the family had carried for 3 generations. He was severing, this quarter, on purpose, at a loss. Territory, money, the leverage that made men arrive first to meetings. He was giving it up. Not losing it in a war, choosing it. You're gutting us, an uncle said, not angry, stunned. I'm keeping the businesses that employ people who need the work, Do-yun said. Shipping, the restaurants, the property that houses families. The rest was never worth what it cost to hold. He looked at Junsuk one last time, and there was nothing cruel in it, which was worse. You wanted this because you thought it was power. Take the fight out of it, and it's just a weight. I've been carrying it 9 years. I'm setting it down. Junsuk had no card left. A man exposed to his own jury, stripped of the empire he'd schemed for because the heir dismantled it rather than defend it, keeps nothing. His alliances were already turning their chairs. He gathered his papers with hands that had stopped being steady, and Tayo opened the door for him without a word, and the quietest man in the room won the whole thing by refusing to fight for most of it. For the first time in his life, Do-yun lost money, territory, and power. And it was the first time he had ever chosen to. He came to the diner at 9 on a Friday, and he had no car. Maeve saw him through the window before Priya did. No black sedan at the curb, no Tayo, no watch on his wrist, the suit traded for a plain coat. He stood on the sidewalk under the sign with the burned-out E and waited, the way he'd once waited on a bench. Except no one was going to feed him this time, and he knew it. She came out with her coat over her arm. The gray car that had haunted the door for 2 weeks was gone. The street was just a street. "It's done," he said. "I heard pieces." She'd heard them from him, on the phone, night after night, an insomniac reading her the day's dismantling, like a man emptying his pockets. "Junsok?" "Finished." His own people counted the same column you did. He almost smiled and didn't quite have it in him yet. "You closed a register and it cost a man an empire." She didn't answer that. She was looking at his empty hands, the naked wrist where the watch had been. "You gave it away." "Most of it." "Why come here with nothing?" she said. It wasn't quite a question. She'd braced for the other version of him, the version with the flowers and the answers. The man who arrived to tell her how her life would go now that he could afford to script it. He didn't do that. He said, "I'm not going to tell you what happens next." She waited. "I did that once," he said. "I put men on you because I decided your fear was mine to spend. You told me I did the exact thing the people around me did, chose for you in the other direction. You were right." He took a breath, the way a man does before the hard sentence. "So I'm not going to tell you what your life looks like. I'm going to ask you, what do you want to build?" The street was quiet. Somewhere behind her, Priya had stopped wiping the pass and was pretending not to listen. Maeve had spent 4 years terrified of a man like the one she'd invented for him, the one who'd walk her out of her own name and call it love. And here he stood with no car, no watch, no answer, holding the question open like an empty palm turned up. She'd offered him that palm once, in a square, to a man everyone else was filming. "Something mine," she said. "Legal. Small to start. A place where the people who work in it get treated like the work matters, like a name on a lease matters." She felt the words steady as she said them, the way the numbers steadied when she wrote them down. "And I own my part of it, not you. Mine. You don't get to fix it, and you don't get to buy it out from under me the day it's hard." "Those are good rules," he said. "You said that before." "I meant it before, too. And when it's mine, and it's small, and it's slow," she said, "you don't rescue it. You watch me work. That's the part you're allowed." "I like watching you work," he said, and this time the smile arrived. She almost didn't let herself. Then she did. She left the diner on her own terms, weeks later, not because a man told her to, and not because the rent finally broke her. The rent had not broken her. The schedule reverted. Ronnie, it turned out, needed his best opener more than he needed corporate's line, and Priya had been right that Friday hadn't come yet with the door still open. Maeve had opened the diner 400 and some mornings and closed it on the morning she chose, with money of her own put by, a plan drawn on the backs of shopping list sheets, and Priya coming with her because a good cook is worth a partnership. The last thing she did behind that counter was serve Mr. Okafor his coffee and fill in 6 across for him. 7 letters. Hidden strength. She still liked reserve. The mansion came after, and it came as an invitation, not a sentence. Do-yoon didn't say leave your life. She had a life now, with her name on more than a lease. He said there's a house that's too quiet, and I don't want it quiet, and everything in it is gray. Come see if you'd want to fill it. She walked in wearing a yellow dress, gold hoops, her curls loose and enormous, and she filled the silent modern rooms with color the way she filled a register drawer. Deliberately, every stack counted. Not because she'd traded her world for his, because she'd built one strong enough to carry into his and keep her own name inside it. He watched her cross the empty floor toward the window she didn't look through, and he understood, finally, the whole arithmetic of it. She had taken his hand in a square when she believed he had nothing, no money, no name, only a dirty man on a bench that boys were filming. She'd fed him with $11 she couldn't spare, and set rules and meant them. She had been the one person in 9 years to be kind to a man who could give her nothing back. And he had needed to give away everything he'd been handed: the power, the fear, the empire built to make people arrive first, before his hand was empty enough and honest enough to be worth holding for the rest of her life. She held it anyway. She'd been holding it since the bench. He'd only just caught up. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever held out your hand to someone the world had already thrown away before you knew what they were worth? Have you ever fought harder to be seen as a person than to be kept safe because someone tried to decide your life for you? And would you have the courage to let go of your own power to deserve the hand that once held yours? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, loyalty, and redemption, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.